Hi, good evening. Welcome everyone to the TNT Show. It's another great day for British democracy. Today we learned that Ruth Davidson has taken Ermine to make the House of Lords more democratic, in quotes. Now this is the biggest assembly outside China that is wholly unelected, but makes laws. Some democracy. Hi, I'm John Drummond, and I'm your host for the next 60 exciting minutes. Thank you for joining us this evening. We have yet another great guest tonight, and I'm really excited that he is with us. Stay tuned to hear from Scotland's foremost actor, and he's taking your questions live. But first, a few words about TNT, The Nation Talks. In many respects, this is your show. Talk to the nation. Tell us what you'd like to say. The details are on the screen. They're available on the website and elsewhere. So it's very much your show. And now to our guest. Tonight, the nation talks to Brian Cox, award-winning movie and theatre legend, campaigner for justice, and independence supporter. Brian joins us from London. How are you, Brian? How are you and the family coping with the pandemic?
Well, I just arrived, John. I've been in I have a house in upstate New York, and I left here, and I directed a play with my wife January, February here, which finished at the beginning of March. And as soon as we were done, we went home. And I immediately went into lockdown because I'm diabetic and I'm regarded as the high risk. And actually, it's been amazing because it's given me an opportunity to do things, because I'm such a city boy, But I'm living in the country, in the middle of the woods. So I've watched, when we arrived in March, the snow was on the ground, there were no leaves on the trees. It's pretty snowy up there. And then slowly I watched the seasons come. And it was a wee bit of a privilege, to be in that situation. So it's actually, it's worked, and I've been busy as anything, doing Zoom calls and voiceovers and documentaries, and, the work hasn't stopped. In fact, I'm dying to get back to my proper job, my day job, so that I can actually go and spend a half an hour in my trailer with a piece of quiet.
That's a long journey to New York from Dundee. Tell us a bit about your origins in Dundee.
Well, I started when I was 15.
Yeah,
I'd always been, I lived in a great dream world as a kid, and also had a dodgy start. My dad died when I was 8. My mum was institutionalized. She had a series of nervous breakdowns. And that's another reason why I've come back, because my eldest sister, Betty, who was great, tough, great, unremitting, but I love her. And she looked out for me, She took care of me, but actually she looked out for me more than took care of me, because it meant that she was just watching me, and I was a relatively free agent at a relatively young age. So now she's 90, and she's in a care home in Aberfeldy. So that's the reason one of the reasons I'm back, is it's my eldest son's 50th birthday. I can't believe that. That just and it's my sister. My sister her birthday was in April, and I missed it because of the lockdown. Yeah. So I'm dying to see her. I haven't seen her for ages. She's in this great place in Aberfeldy. So that's one of the reasons I've come back, But Dundee, for me was, because Dundee's on the Tay, your view is the Tay. Wherever you go in Dundee, you see the Tay, and of course it has that magnet. What's over there? What's across the Tay? That's the drag for Dundee. That when I was young, in many ways, I couldn't wait to get away, because I couldn't wait to get across that Tay.
Yeah.
Because there's Fife on the other side as well. You can't win them all. Anyway, no, that's not fair. I love Fife. I absolutely love it. In fact, I think my ideal beat, if I was retiring to Scotland, the problem is the rain, but I would retire to the East Neuk. That's where I'd really like to live.
A lovely spot.
Oh, I love the East Neuk. I love it. Absolutely love it. So that was, we had a holiday a couple of years ago, and we were staying in Lade Braes in St Andrews, and we used to go. So anyway, what happened was that I had this kind of mixer maxer upbringing. I mean, I was taught originally by Maris brothers at my school, and they were wonderful people, lay preachers, brother teaching order, great guys. And then they went away. They all went into the schemes, and I was also a product of that. That all the kids, I still lived in my school was Our Lady of Victories, which was known as Fourbank, St Mary's Fourbank, and that was my school. And then in the mid-50s, all my pals went off to the schemes, to Douglas and Craigie and Fintry and Downfield and Whitfield wasn't around then, but that's where they all graduated. And I thought, they're all gone, and it's sort of social engineering, which I discovered later. Not of the best kind, which you take all the bad people, what they thought were the bad people, you take them out of the slums, but communities, and you spread them in these faceless places. I was lucky that didn't happen to me. So I used to, then it was, they were just ordinary teachers that came in, and the headmaster was a guy called Mr. Robertson, and he would always get me to go messages. I would go messages. I was always, Cox, I need you to go to Largs and look out. I need a stylus for my hi-fi. I mean, this kind of stuff. I mean, what was I? I was 9, And of course, I loved it because I'll get to the gab, as you can hear. I would go off for the whole day, and I'd get back at 2 o'clock. We were over by 4 nights, so I found your stylus. And I'd been out since 11 o'clock. Sometimes I didn't even go home. I didn't even go back to school. But it was not good for my education because there was nobody. So I failed my 11 plus. I went to this St. Michael's Junior Secondary. I had 2 great, they never actually taught me directly, but one was my registrar and the other was a guy called Bill Dewar and George Hackett. And these were 2 guys, again, who looked out for me. And they could see that I was a fish out of water, and they saw that. And I had this acting bug, which I'd had since my dad put me on the coal bunker, and I used to do Jolson impersonations when I was 2, and 3, so that stuck with me. I thought, well, this is good. New Year's Eve, he'd put me on the bunker, I'd do with all the actions, and my audience would go, whoa, and I thought, I like this. So it stuck. And I managed to get through Bill Dewar. He knew a guy called Frank McGrath who was working at the Rep. And his job was going. And he said, why don't you go for Frank's job? So I went down there. And the first time I walked in the theatre, there was a fight going on. So I thought, what the heck's this? There was 2 actors. One of them was Nicol Williams, and Nicol was, so all this was going on. I thought, God. So I was trying to get past them because it was really close where the dressing rooms were. So I got past them. There was a guy standing on the landing smoking a cigarette, an actor called Gone Granger, who's still with us, Gone. And he looked at me and he said, are you all right, darling? And I thought, that might probably done. And I thought, well, this obviously is where I should be. So then I went off to, I went in, and the guy was a nice man called John Henderson, who was the theatre director at the time of Dundee Rep, and this was 61. Oh, God. And I was just 15, only just 15. And he asked me, he said, so do you know anything about classical music? And I knew nothing. I mean, nothing. But there's a guy called Brad Cato, who was a music teacher, and he just did a class where he played because the poor man was demented by these psychotic Dundonian 12-year-olds. And he was, poor man, what those poor teachers went through.
I know.
I mean, I went to school with a bunch of killers and bandits, con artists, the whole lot. And he said, okay, he said, I'm going to give you some classical music. So he played the trumpet march from Aida, Verdi's Aida. So I thought, so John Henderson said, what about classical music? And I said, well, it's funny you should say that, but I have a particular liking for the trumpet march from Aida. And he could see right through me. He knew I was blagging myself. But I got the job, and I started at Dundee Rep, and that was the best time, the best time.
Good. And And now, here we are in the present day, you've been nominated for an Emmy for Succession.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. So, I mean, how do you, I mean, do they write to you and say, we've nominated you? How does it work?
No, yeah, they announce it. They have a big thing in the States where they used to, of course, it's all virtual now because of our present crisis. But they have a morning where they do the noms. I mean, it's a big nomination list. I mean, our show alone has got 18 nominations, which is pretty amazing.
Isn't it?
And a great writing team. And it's a great show. I mean, I kind of, when I got funny enough, the first read through of the show was the day we got the bad news about that sort of Pink Pinocchio being voted president. We had to deal with that.
Yeah.
And that was a bit of a downer at the end of our rather lovely day. But no, I mean, that's what they do. They announce it, and so that was the announcement. I think the ceremony, I don't know what it's going to be. I think it's going to be virtual, which is on the 25th of September.
Excellent.
And it's lovely. I mean, and it's a great show, and I'm very lucky. And if you hang around long enough, something always turns up.
Well, that's a bit self-deprecating. I mean, I've seen the show. I'm a big fan. And I have to say, sparing your blushes, you're very good. I mean, you really are. And,
thank you.
And it's captivating because, it's a leap of imagination because not everyone's been running a huge empire like Logan does. But
especially from Dundee.
But it's entirely credible because it's as much about the family dynamic as it is about the way the business is running, and that's always fascinating for people. I mean, people it just resonates, But you actually you did some shooting in Dundee. I mean, you clearly had an influence on the script as well.
Yeah, but it was, I don't know, not exactly subliminal, but the weirdest thing was we started filming, and for 9 episodes, not, this was we were coming up to the 9th episode. So we were filming in Eastnor. We were filming in this big old country mansion in Eastnor down in Gloucestershire. And I was with the actor, Peter Friedman, who I'm always firing and rehiring in the show. And he said, Brian, I just did some, ADR. ADR is what they call additional dialogue required. And that's when you do dubbing and post-syncing.
Yeah.
He said, they've changed your birthplace. I said, what? He said, they've changed your birthplace. I said, what do you mean they've changed my birthplace? He said, yeah, you're not born in Quebec anymore. I said, I'm not. He said, no, you're not. You're born. He said, I can't remember where you're born. I said, well, I'd love to know where I'm born. He said, well, hang on. He looked at his mobile and he went, oh, yeah, here we are. Somewhere called Dundee, Scotland. And I went, but that's where I'm from. What's going on? Suddenly in the 9th episode, they revealed it. And then the guy, I saw the writers, Jesse Armstrong, and he looked at me and he said, oh, we thought it'd be a little surprise. I said, it's a hell of a surprise. I've been this Canadian for 9 episodes, and suddenly he's a Dundonian. I said, it's a whole different ballgame. He said, yeah, but you came to Canada. You were in a kinder transport that came to Canada when you were, 1. So that was it.
That's great. And
then they did this episode, which was called Dundee, and they got permission to film in the V&A, which was wonderful, and see the town all done up now.
Yeah.
I mean, Dundee's been through it. I mean, my poor city's been through it, and it's got there. I'm really proud.
Yeah, it's Well, it's very much a yes city too.
Yeah. Oh, we are the yes people.
Yeah.
I was with friends, in 2000 and when was it when we had the referendum?
2014.
2014. Oh my God, 6 years. Yeah, and I remember it, and I was just particularly proud that I was Dundonian, and we were the yes city for Scotland.
Yeah.
And it's also to do with the history of Dundee and particularly the social history and the the failure of subsequent parties to really do what they're supposed to do and what they did never honor to do. And the Dundonians are very honest people.
Yeah.
You know, they cut the crap. You know, they call a shovel. You know,
Yeah.
and that's what I like about my hometown. That's what I like about it, because it's, you know, it's tough. It's been tough. It still is for a lot of people there.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they're the yes city of Scotland.
Yeah, indeed. And I saw a marvellous photograph recently about some women from I think one of the jute mills giving Churchill a torrid time.
Oh yeah, yeah. He had a rough time. I mean, he really does. He really, you know, because I played Churchill. Ironically enough, you know, I played Churchill, so I remember that, and I remember the fact, you know, and my uncle Geordie, who was, you know, because I'm the youngest son of the youngest son. So my dad was born in 1904. And all his brothers were like, well, his sister was 25 years older than him, you know, his oldest sister. And my uncle and my auntie Susan was married to Geordie, he was called Geordie McQuarrie. Like Mac Who, you know, that's what his name was, Geordie McQuarrie. And Geordie said, oh, kid, Churchill, we gave him what for when he came to Dundee. He said he was at I can't remember what the hall was. He says, at that hall. I said, we went up the stairs, it was up the Lochie Road. We went to the top, we got this bucket of water, and we poured it all over him. he said, yeah, we got rid of him. He said he was no good. And of course, it turned out the thing that really Churchill had done was the fact that it was the Irish question that he really had let everybody down on, and the fact that he kind of indirectly responsible for the death of Michael Collins, and kindly that kind of debate, and it was the Irish populace in Dundee who sort of turned against him big time, because he was MP from 1908 to 1922.
That's a long time.
And my uncle then conceded. He said, well, you can. He said he was a terrible man, but he was awfully good during the war, you know.
Now, was he a Tory then, or was he a Liberal?
No, he changed parties. That was the other thing. He changed parties, which was extremely suspicious. He went from being a Liberal to becoming a Tory.
Yeah. Now, not only have you played Churchill, you've played Goring.
Yeah.
You've played Stalin.
Yeah.
And Trotsky. Yeah. I mean, there's four incredible characters.
Oh, yeah. Really interesting. I mean, I've been very lucky, you know. You know. No, I have been. I mean, I've been amazingly lucky. This profession has been very kind to me, and it keeps on being kind. You know, it keeps on giving, which is lovely. I mean, I'm happier now than I've ever been in my job, you know, because the work is great. And of course, playing those guys, you know, giving them a point of view, which is very hard, you know, when you're playing Stalin or you're playing Trotsky is different. He's much more kind of, there's something kind of more heroic about Trotsky, not so much about Stalin. And Goring was an interesting case because he was kind of, you know, he was a man who, when Germany was actually falling apart and he was very much against the Treaty of Versailles, and we forget about what the Treaty of Versailles did to Germany, how it put the boot in on Germany, and it did directly give rise to, because the great debate was between communism and socialism, national socialism, and you know, Rosa Luxemburg on the one side, and what eventually wasn't started by him, but what eventually would come out of Hitler, and he threw his lot in with Adolf Hitler, and, you know, we know what that little escapade led to. And then, of course, Churchill, who was a fascinating man. I mean, really fascinating. You know, his great thing was his act of hubris, which was the Dardanelles campaign, Gallipoli, and that hit him pretty bad. And he went to the front. as a soldier after that for the Scots Hussars, the Scots Fusiliers, one of those Scottish groups. And he, he served at the front because he felt that he'd failed. And his career was so interesting because he was always out on a limb, but he was also very anti-Hitler before everybody else was anti-Hitler. He said, I did a great job during the war.
Do you think Churchill's concerns about D-Day were connected in any way to the fiasco of Gallipoli?
I think it was. It's only mentioned I think it's mentioned in a couple of biographies. I think Eisenhower mentions it, and I think I always forget the man's name. He was a field marshal, an English field marshal at the time. Name's gone. Anyway, they both in their biographies refer to it obliquely, but there was clear, and also he'd had a heart attack in the previous winter, at the end of 43, beginning of 44. And D-Day, as you know, was 44. So there was this whole movement that was going on. And of course, the Americans were coming in and they were, they dressed better than the British soldiers. They all looked much better. They were very clear about what they wanted to do. And Churchill was a bit sidestepped by them, I think. History doesn't really look into that as much as it should do. And I think in the end, he decided, that he was very, very nervous because of what happened in Gallipoli. He was very nervous because it was so concentrated. And the irony was the Americans came off much worse. Their beach came off much worse than any of the other beaches. Their beach being, I used to know this by heart. What was it?
Well, a lot of the American beaches were named after American states.
Yeah.
So Idaho and
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I'm trying to remember which one it was.
We've got a question from Billy Kay.
Billy.
You know Billy?
Billy.
I know that you know about his books, and he's saying, he says, how come a nice guy like you ends up playing ruthless characters like that?
Because nobody else will do it.
What do you channel? What inside you do you channel when you're doing?
Well, the interesting thing is that I remember there was years and years ago. I mean, God, I'm talking, there was one time when I played a lot of very nasty men, and I kind of go, why am I playing all these nasty men? I don't understand. I'm a perfectly affable human being. Why do I always play these? Because, and I think it's, they always say the devil has the best tunes, and there's that element to it. But it's also the human flaw. That's what interests me as an actor. Why do people start off with a certain group of ideals that then diminish into something else and they become something else? Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So you see it, and you see histories of it. So legend, and then you see people like Churchill who came into their own time, and it was the long haul. I mean, that happened to me when I was a young actor. Somebody said to me, Brian, don't worry about those two great things. My old kind of spiritual mentor was Fulton Mackay. And Fulton Mackay once said to me, he said, oh, Brian, what are you doing? Don't worry about being a star. He said, you're always worried about this and that and the next thing. He said, just say your prayers and be a good actor. And that was the best advice that anybody ever gave to me, really. And God bless his soul. I was so grateful for that. Fulton he was right on.
Yeah.
And that's what you do, and I knew it was going to be a long process, but also along the way, there's going to be a lot of interesting case studies, because that's what they are.
Yeah.
Why do human beings behave the way they do? And why are audiences transfixed by them? I mean, why did the, not a majority, but a certain certain group of the populace of America go for Donald Trump?
Yeah.
When clearly the man is psychotic, he's a liar, he's a fantasist, and he's quite demented. And I don't think he's, as my mother would say, he's no affy wheel. you know. So why? So Donald Trump, I'd never want to play because he's just a bad script. You know, I mean, you want a better script than that. But you get good scripts. I mean, Stalin's certainly an interesting script, as is Churchill, as is Trotsky, you know, as well.
Do you think people really understand? I mean, through you and Churchill and these characters, maybe it helps to better understand how people do change when they're in positions of power.
Yeah.
We've had a question here from a questioner is asking, talking about somebody in power, how would you rate Nicola Sturgeon just now?
Tremendous.
Tremendous.
I think she's a woman, which is what we need. We need more women in power.
Yeah.
I think the men have reached their sell-by date. You know, and I think that they've made too many mistakes, and they don't get a lot of it. You know, I mean, Thatcher's a kind of, we won't go there, but that's something that was an aberration.
To prove your rule.
Yeah, it was an aberration. But although a lot of people admired how she ran the show, you know, there was something formidable about her. But I think Nicola does a great job. She's very honest. She's very down to earth. She's very straight. And certainly her handling of the pandemic, you know, when you think of what's happening down here with the bunch of Waziks we've got here running the show, you know, the Johnsons and the Goves and, you know, the Mickey Mouse Brigade, you know. But Nicola has real dignity and real clarity. And it's also to do with the emergence of what I think is great about our country, how Scotland has emerged into something quite else. You know, when I was a kid, Scotland was North Britain, you know, because its history has been so interrupted. We were cannon fodder in the First World War. I mean, not just us. The Northern Irish were the same. English, I mean, everybody suffered from the First World War. But we had our fair share of being cannon fodder. And we did it. And of course, our history is all to do with, you know, we're a warrior people. You know, that's what we did. You know, we lost after 45, we lost our regiments, we lost all of that. They all went, all the Highland regiments went. And then, of course, Pitt the Younger, he was a smarty. He said, we need empire. So we'll reconstitute the black, and, you know, create the Black Watch, the Argyll and Southerns, the HLI. And these were all inventions based on a notion of what Scottish regiments were.
Yeah.
It worked to a certain extent. But the other thing was that you realize that, I mean, it's just incredible that those regiments, that they were then serving empire. They were the thin red line. They were at the front. And of course, that, and as you saw in that wonderful play, Black Watch, all those soldiers, they're all worried about their buddies.
Yeah.
It's their community they worry about. Not, they do the job, but it's their community that's important to them. And I think Pitt understood that. And of course, the Highlanders because I didn't realize until quite recently that the Highland regiments, the old Highlanders, on their broadswords, they had graffiti. They used to carve different stuff into their swords. And it was part of their art. There was a creative thing. And I think we've seen that. We've seen Scotland move, and Ireland to a certain extent, well, yeah, it's also Ireland, move from a kind of tribalism to what I think is a sort of egalitarian state, which really comes from what happened during the Scottish Enlightenment and how we informed our thinking, you know, and how we also helped to create America.
Yeah.
You know, John Adams and all the set books were by, prominent Scots Enlightenment people in Princeton, Harvard. So that was our contribution. We couldn't do it for our own country because we'd been robbed, because we made several mistakes with the Darien scheme and all that, but we lost it all. But our intellectuals and our philosophers did an incredible job.
Yeah.
Hume, Adam Smith. It's incredible when you look at that period of Scottish history and what was going on, and the words of wisdom that were coming out. And also that humanist thing, which was pulling away from religion. It was pulling toward, especially with David Hume. So I think that is something that's so intrinsic about who we are. And that is why we have to have our own country, finally, because we need to be who we are. We're not allowed to be who we are. And Nicola is a very good example of who we are and what we should be.
And do you think, I mean, this might be stretching a point, and you might not agree with this, but do you think because we are not who we are, we can't make that contribution to the rest of the world that we ought to make?
Well, except we have made a huge contribution to the rest of the world. I mean, what we've done, we've been peripatetic, and Stevenson understood it really well, because Stevenson's my favorite quote of Stevenson, and it's so true of the nomadic Scot, because I'm a nomad. I go, my family originally came from all over the place, but the Coxes came from Largy in Northern Ireland. The McCanns, the male McCanns, came from Donegal and Derry. And then the Herds, which was my mother's name, they all came from the Borders. So we were definitely, we were Micmacs, Irish Scots. So, that's who we are. And we've not been allowed to be that. Our history has been thwarted, constantly thwarted, because we've been serving masters when we should actually be serving ourselves. I didn't realize this till late on. I mean, I used to look at Alex Salmond and the NS. I have to say up front, I don't like the word nationalism. I really don't like that, though I will vote SNP, but I think that's a name, that has too many connotations for me, which actually don't really portray the Scottish character, actually. But I can understand where it came from. I just think it should be changed. It should be different. But I think that we have moved from a sort of tribalism to a kind of egalitarian state. And people know that when they come to Scotland. And of course we've contributed, our history. The quote of Stevenson, which I love, is when he says, "I travel not to go anywhere, but to go. The great affair is to move." Yeah. And that's what Stevenson did as a writer. He moved. That's what the Scots did. Graham Bell, we see the history of it. Yeah.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? Another fan has written in, Sharon Gallagher, says, "Hi, Brian, I'm an avid fan of Succession. The acting is superb by all the actors. Have you filmed any of a new series, or do you plan to start again when it's safe to do so?"
We plan to start again. We've got a great team. HBO put together a great team. We've got a wonderful, really exec line producer who organizes everything, called Scott Ferguson. And Scott's doing a great job. And we will go, possibly in November, but we have to see how it is. We're being canny about it. And there's we're watching what other shows do who are kind of guinea pigs to this whole COVID experiment, so the guinea pigs about getting back to work. But we have to be sensible. But the protocols, HBO are being incredible. They're looking at it. They're so detailed in their protocol. And we will go on in excellent circumstances.
Great. Super. That's good to know. You're doing a bunch of other things. I mean, you're the busiest guy I've come across in a long day's march. And one of the things you're doing that's really exciting, I think, is that you're doing a documentary, or a voiceover documentary perhaps, on Catalonia. What's all that about?
Well, it's about the debacle of the would-be Catalonia government and how they were treated. And as you rightly said, how they were victims of the Spanish Constitution, and as you also rightly said, that is something that we don't have to worry about, because we don't have a written constitution in this country. And the problem is, when you do have a written constitution, and especially a written constitution by Franco, it's questionable. And those guys really suffered. really, really suffering. There's one episode which is called Prisoner Politicians. And that's what they were. You know, they were treated amazingly badly, you know, and again, it was the will of the people that was ignored. And they have their own culture, their own language. And you see, I think the thing about all of this, you know, I don't want to give up the United Kingdom. I do want to give up the United Kingdom, but I'd like to see a time when we have a federation of British states, that when we come together on a kind of equal basis, which we don't have at the moment because we're feudal. You know, we're all told to be, this is what we do and this is our place. But what we can offer is tremendous. And that's what was the tragedy of Catalonia, is these people were, you know, everybody voted for it. People wanted that. And I think we're moving back to what I call the particular. And the particular is what we need to be, where we're rooted. And we can have because the Scots have always had this view of the world, which is not just about their own country. You know, we've had a strong relationship to Europe, much stronger relationship than the South. You know, that's why you could see it in the Brexit vote. You know, we voted to stay, and the rest of the idiots didn't. You know, and it was an unwise move, I think. But at the same time, you know, that is who we are. We have an understanding of Europe, and there's a lot. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think Europe's a perfect organization. The European Parliament is perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, there's a lot that needs to be done. But it is about outward going. But it's also coming from a particular place. It's coming from who you are, not who you're pretending to be on behalf of somebody else. And that's always been the problem. You know, that's why. And as I say, you know, 20 odd years ago, I would look at Alex Salmond and say, what is this guy? What is this idiot? And I came because I was a big Labour man. I was a big Labour man for many, and I did the voice of Labour for the 1997 election, which was fantastic, and a huge election, a huge win for Labour, and the biggest opportunity we had to do something in terms of our socialist sense, what we had, and we miffed it. We got in bed with with Rumsfeld and Cheney and their goon, which was what's his name, George Bush, and and this horrific thing in the Middle East, in Iraq, which was unnecessary. There was no weapons of mass destruction, and it was all about regime change. Now, that should have happened right at the beginning of in 1991, when there was the invasion of, when he invaded, when Saddam Hussein invaded
Kuwait.
the oil, Kuwait. So it should have grown out of that. But no, there was a gap, and George Bush was saying, well, I'll do what my daddy didn't do. You know, he's like proving something to his daddy, I'll make sure. And it was an illegal war.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. And that just affected me and my relationship with my Labour people. I just thought, this is wrong. We shouldn't be doing this. And then I could see more and more I was drawn to what was going on in Scotland.
Maybe, do you think that Brexit might have the same effect on a lot of people who are perhaps swithering and might perhaps persuade them to decide that independence is a better option?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I think it's a huge opportunity for us. You know, as my mother used to say, he's awfully smart, but he's beautifully marked. You know, and I think that's true. I think that's the great thing about Scotland. You know, we're small, but we are beautifully marked.
Yeah. Well, I think we're certainly that. Coming back to acting and the theatre again, I mean, obviously the pandemic's had a huge impact. I mean, you talked about shows that might have started by now, but they've been delayed. There's been all sorts of ramifications attached to what happens in the arts generally. And a lot of people are suffering as a result. I know everybody's suffering, but maybe the arts in particular don't get as much the same attention. What do you think the future is for theatre and actors?
Well, I mean, I think we'll get back to, because one of our problems is man is gregarious. We are essentially a gregarious animal. And even though I'm personally, I'm not one for crowds at all, but man likes to be together. We like to congregate. We like to be with one another. And we look at ways of doing that. Religion is one thing. That's what religion did, it brought people together. But the arts, the theatre does it as well. Cinema does it. Television does it. Much more subliminally, but television is much more successful because that's the strength of the moment is that everybody is binge watching because of COVID.
Yeah.
So the drama hasn't gone away. It's just shifted itself towards this media, television. Yeah. But in the theatre, we have to go through a pause of it's bad, it's really bad. But finally, we've stepped up to the plate in terms of giving us money to cover us, giving us a bridging loan to bridge ourselves through. And we're going to have to bridge ourselves through. We will be back. The theatre will return. It's because it's frustrating people. They can't communicate. They can't communicate en masse. Well, they shouldn't at the moment. Not while we've got this pandemic. And they should think that it's in their interest. Wear the mask. Wear the bloody mask. It doesn't matter about that. Just do that. Because you're protecting your others. And by protecting others, you're protecting yourself. So we'll get back to a state, there'll be an adjustment. There'll be lots of things that'll happen. But there'll also be great, because it's going to be a great period for creationists. Yeah. People writing about this period, how we view the period. Historically, we'll look back on this and we'll think about it in an entirely different way from what we're thinking about it now, because now it just seems never ending, but it will end and we will get back. And there are a few unfortunate victims, but we have to take care not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We have to also look after our people. That's what we need to do. We need to make sure that the people they're there in a form of remand at the moment, but they have to be called upon, and we're going to need them.
Yeah.
And we may need them a lot quicker than we think,
Yeah.
So I don't feel bad about it. I feel bad about the people who are affected, the people who've lost their jobs for the moment. But, what can I say? As I say, I've been incredibly lucky. But I am not in the most secure profession in the world. It is not. The one thing you don't do is you don't become an actor to get security. Yeah. Because it's a neurotic thing that you're doing. With proper mental health, you could get rid of it. You could change.
Which brings me to one of the questions rather neatly. Mike has sent an email saying, is there a role that you were offered but you didn't take and you now regret that you didn't do so?
No, I can't think of that. I can't think if there was a role I was offered that I didn't take. There's roles I was offered that I didn't take, but I've not regretted it. So I don't want to. I was asked recently, for instance, I was asked to play a KKK guy. And I just couldn't do it. My late friend Brian Dennehy did it, but I couldn't do it. There was something about it, and also it's something about being a lot older now. There are certain roles where people because I did a lot of good work. I'm not complaining, but it was a lot where be 15 minutes. I'd come on and I'd do my turn. Yeah. And playing a villain or doing something. And I'm less inclined to do that now because I'm more interested in other stuff. I'm more interested in politics. I'm more interested in documentaries. I'm more interested in presenting other aspects apart from the work where I earn my bread and butter. But at the moment, I'll turn down things because I'm a certain age now, so there's a statute of limitations on everything.
So, looking ahead, you mentioned politics there. Looking ahead, thinking about the States, do you think it's going to be a shoe-in for Joe Biden, or do you feel that?
No, I don't think we can get. I don't think we can. The country's in a bad way, and it's quite psychotic at the moment, or even psychopathic, and it reflects the. I mean, did you see that Australian interview with Trump and that Australian?
Yeah.
I mean, really, that says all.
Yeah.
I mean, that you just go, God, that man's, he's out of it. He's gone. I mean, he's lost it. But unfortunately, you cannot be too smug about it. Biden, he's on the right side, of course, but he's a certain age. I personally would like to have seen somebody else come into it. I think that though he's rightly not interested, but I think Andrew Cuomo has done an amazing job running the whole. He's a bit like what Nicola and that lovely lassie in New Zealand's done, running the COVID thing, and he's done a phenomenal job. He really has, because New York was in a very bad way.
Yeah.
In my county alone, now there are only 6 cases in the whole county, which is pretty phenomenal, actually. So he's always been contentious, Cuomo, but he's suddenly emerged as a good leader. But I think Biden's got a great track record, and he's a good man. We need some goodness.
Yeah,
we do need some goodness and some morals. We need to get back to some moral certainty, which we've lost totally in the States. But unfortunately, you cannot get too smug about it. You can't just imagine it's going to be a shoo-in. It's not going to be a shoo-in.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like a rat wriggling on a hook, I mean, he's going to try every which way. He's going to try and put it off. He's going to try and postpone it. He's going to blame voting, write-in votes, and he's doing all kinds of, nonsense. So I would like to think that I will see a Democratic president in January, but I'm not taking it for granted.
Yeah. I think that's you hope for the best, but you prepare for the worst, I guess.
Well, you just have to be, as the great Mullah said, you've always got to tie up your camels.
Another fan has written in, Dorothy McWhinney, sorry, and she said, Brian, of all your films, what was your favourite?
Well, it's like saying who's your favourite child. You have to be very careful. I've had a great time. I've done some great films, and some, films that have enabled me career-wise. I think, I don't. There's not a film I regret. I mean, I love doing the Bourne films. I love my turn in the X-Men films. I love doing Troy. And then I do these other films, these independent films. I did a great film called The Escapist, which I love because it's a script that I produced. So that was something that means a lot to me, The Escapist. And, and the opportunity for me to be working with young directors who are struggling. I love young directors because that's very exciting to be part of something where you're seeing the emergence of people like Wes Anderson, Spike Jonze. These are all people that I've worked with, Rupert Wyatt, Colin McPherson, the start. So that's the excitement for me.
Yeah.
So the roles, of course, I mean, when I made the decision to go and live in LA, LA, first of all, but I still keep going back and forth. I can't keep away. I made the decision that I was going to be, having been a leading actor, and I didn't follow suit, like the grand actor being, now I will do this theatre role and I'll do that and this, I thought, oh, to hell with all that. I just want to work. And I wanted to do movies because that was what I wanted to do from when I was a kid. So when I went to LA in the first time, I just wanted to do anything just to get in the groove. And I was 50, My career was pretty immaculate until then. I had a great time, but I just wanted to do the stuff, be part of it, you know. And I remember meeting Nigel Hawthorne on a plane, and he just finished a film with Sly Stallone, Sylvester Stallone, and he was saying, "Oh, I can't do that. I can't do these kind of films anymore. I really can't. The parts, I just can't play those roles anymore. It's not, you know, it's not feasible. I just, and the situation, I couldn't do that." And I said, "Sylvester Stallone?" He said, yes, I can't. I said, "I swap you. Steven Seagal." I work with Steven Seagal. And I said, you know, I follow the adage of the great Michael Powell, the director. And it was a wonderful thing that I took with me when I made this career shift to being a character actor. I've always been a character actor, but to do it in movies. And I said, what Powell said is, in movies, there are no big parts and small parts. There are long parts and short parts. You're either on a movie a long time or you're on a short time. And it is the most egalitarian of art form in that way, because the day player comes in, she's got one scene, he's got one scene. That's that day, and that's your focus. So that's what they do. That's what the energy goes towards. And I love that aspect of the cinema. That's what I love about the cinema. And I was most happy to do that. I didn't, because I wasn't back to the you're in your place, you're there, you're here. That goes against all my socialist roots anyway. I believe anybody can do anything. That's why I have a lot of issues with diversity, because diversity sometimes, I believe, of course, in diversity in principle, but sometimes you can be diverse. You can play. And my career is proof of that I've played so many roles that have been so different and contrasting,
Yeah. I hate to put you on the spot here, so don't answer this if you don't want to, but looking ahead to the next independence referendum, which may take place next year, Alan Cummings has said, look, if this happens, I'll be straight across and play any part that I can. What's your feeling about that?
I'm the same, providing that it doesn't cost me my work. I'm fine. Me canny, what I mean? No, I'm joking. No, of course, be there. I'll be there like a shot.
Yeah, that's great, because I think
this is key. This is important. Yeah. We got close last time, but we've got to do it this time. We really have to do it. It's going to be hard though, because the fat blonde boy, he's not going to like it very much.
Well, yeah, that's true. But then again, there's such a thing as democracy. And
oh, well, really?
Yeah. Well, I say that.
Really? Are you going to give me 20 minutes on democracy and then I'd be very happy to. Democracy. Yeah.
Well, in view of the fact we live in a state where the Constitution is pretty much whatever the government with a working majority says it is.
Well, exactly. We've seen it. When you think about this last election and you look at what happened in the north of England and how Labour got swept away, and yet that geography teacher, Jeremy Corbyn, the policies were really good policies. There was nothing wrong with them. What was wrong with them? There was no charisma. There was no taking it to the people in the right way. And it was, and then when you go for an idiot who has no policies, who's just an opportunist of the first order, it's truly tragic, because you keep thinking, what were you thinking, you people? What are you thinking to vote that loon, that self-confessed liar?
Yeah. Well, he's made no secret of it, I don't think.
And a fantasist, and then this latest stuff with Lord Botham and his brother. You go, what? You go, and again, as you said, an organization where they're not voted on. I'm all for a second chamber, That's why I want to see a federal state. I have to say, John, I'm as concerned about, because I'm an Anglophile. I've lived in London quite a lot of my life. I studied in London. I learned how to speak properly in London. I learned all of that, and I'm from the East Coast, remember. We didn't have the same, it was hard to get west in those days, The roads were very, very narrow. It was easier to get a train south than cross. But, so I really feel that, I've lost my track.
Well, it's maybe the case that with Scottish independence, that might give people south of the border a chance to properly.
This is what I'm trying to say. I feel deeply about what's happened, particularly in the north of England, and how they've become alienated and cynical and left with this situation that they're in now, which I'm sure quite a lot of them regret. And, as King Lear says, we haven't taken care of this. It's not been taken care of. And that's that's the thing I feel, because I am an Anglophile and I feel sad about what's happened. Yeah. I feel really sad about it because, I was part of probably one of the greatest periods certainly in the 20th century, which was the 60s.
Yeah.
When we had the most incredible social mobility, when our kid from Dundee could go to a drama school, have a grant, be paid for by the state, and saying, "Good luck, son, get on with it, do it, do what you can." And I owe the state everything in that way.
Yeah.
The Scottish Education Authority at that time, they gave me the opportunity to do this, and I'm grateful for it. So I am grateful to the state for taking care of me. And there was a great period of social mobility, the films of Lindsay Anderson, Carl Rice, John Schlesinger, wonderful actors like Alan Bates, my old mate Albert Finney, Peter O'Toole. I mean, the work was to Tom Courtney. The work was tremendous. And you felt part of it. You felt there was something burgeoning, and then all closed in on itself.
Yeah.
And that to me it's very tragic. And I think that, we've emerged, as I said, it was North Britain when I grew up in Scotland. And we've emerged as something, because we've been so interrupted, we emerged since the war as something rather remarkable.
Yeah.
And I feel sorry that our southern cousins haven't had the same advantages that we've had.
Well, maybe there was a lot of stimulus that caused that change in Scotland. And maybe if the point I was trying to make earlier, but maybe with independence, that might give everyone south of the border a chance to sort of.
Well, I think it would. I think that could be the necessary straw to break the necessary camel's back. And I think it could. I think it could do a great service.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're almost coming to an end. I'm really grateful to you, Brian. I know how busy you are.
I have to Heather. I've got to thank.
Heather Anderson.
What, Heather
Anderson?
Heather Anderson. Thank you, Heather, for giving me your support. That was very kind of you. I'm socially isolated, so I have to be very careful. So I can only do today.
Yeah, and the other fan who asked me to be mentioned to you was Eddie Reader, and she'll. Heather Anderson is up next week in this slot, and hopefully Eddie Reader will be able to join us later on in August. Brian, thanks very much. I really appreciate it. You've given us what I can only describe as a fantastic interview. It's been fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Well, folks, our time is almost up. We've just got a couple of minutes. A big thanks to Brian, obviously.
Thank you, John.
It's a great pleasure. Look out for the next series of episodes of Succession. And do look out for the Catalonia documentary. Once we get a signal back from Brian when that might be on the cards, we'll let you know. And a big thanks to all of you for watching tonight. You are who make the show with the guests. As I said just now, we've got a formidable list of guests coming up for future shows. Former MEP Heather Anderson will join us next week, and she'll be talking about Westminster's plans for devolution, and none of it is any good. Believe me, it is not good. You don't want to miss this. Heather has gone right into discovering exactly how many powers that London wants to remove from Hollywood. So join us next week at 7 p.m. for The Nation Talks. Look out for the Constitution column in the Sunday National. My colleague, Dr. Elliot Bulmer, will bring you the latest constitutional news. And very importantly, do support India Live and India Live Radio. It's new voices for a new Scotland. You'll get information here. You'll get fantastic guests like Brian that you wouldn't get anywhere else, who are taking questions live for 60 minutes. And for all of you who like the TNT show, contribute to India Live, please. And thanks again for joining us. And I hope to see you next Wednesday. And remember, it's been a great day for British democracy. Good night, all.